Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fifth edition of Top Talk, where we speak to industry leaders and experts to bring their insights to you. I'm Yash. I look after product at Topmate, and it makes me extremely excited to introduce you to our speaker for today, Dr. Bart Jaworski. Bart is a product management teacher, mentor, and previously senior product manager at Microsoft. Though he considers his job more of a hobby, he just enjoys the process of bringing people together to create something great and helping them improve. Dr. Bart feels fortunate to have executed his career plan as he envisioned it, and he takes great pride in his doctorate degree. Even though he is still an active PM, he is committed to giving back to the community. His online courses have assisted thousands of people in advancing their careers, and he's very eager to assist people to develop new skills and advance their career as much as possible, which is why he actively mentors people on TopMet as well. And I'm extremely excited to announce that we are providing 50% off coupons to anyone, to the first five people who book a session with Part after this call. And 20% off to the next 15 folks who book a session with him. So stay tuned till the end till we share the coupons. And with that out of the way, over to you, Bart. Welcome to Top Talk.
Welcome, happy to be here. I recall, think I was one of the first people of the, at least I feel like it. Like it's the startup that you see developing, you see aggressively pushing new features, and you're rooting for it because, well, you're part of it. And I think I was pitched by a few similar products like this, and this is the Topmate didn't ask me to say this. This is like from the bottom of my heart that I truly enjoyed working with you guys, and especially having a direct line to your CEO saying, "Hey, I don't like I'm missing this feature, or I don't think this works just as it's supposed to." Is really like unique experience that you can have in the 21st century. Imagine in the 90s being able to just call Bill Gates and say, "Hey, listen, the spell check is not like accurate. It irritates me. Can you do something about it next year?" Next year. And here I get my new features every like month or two. So, whoa, it's an incredible time to be alive, right?
Yeah, that makes us incredibly happy. And you associating us with the next. Yeah, we hope to become the next Microsoft, and I think Ankit will be very happy to hear that. And it honestly what we try to do that keeping our users happy. So excited to see that.
So far, one of them is at least really happy.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Great. So, uh, we have some questions for you. We just wanted our audience to know more about you. So, we'll start with that. So, this is a question that I honestly had because we didn't have a chat before, and I just wanted to know. So, did you plan your career around being in product management, or is it something that it just happened that you got into product, you loved it, and you kept doing it?
At some point, yes. Well, my career ambitions were really fluctuating like when I was around 18, 20, because, well, this is what happens when you're around 18, 20. You don't have a plan for life, you have leads. And there was, I remember, a lawyer lead, there was a dentist lead, there was an architect lead, and for some time I pictured myself as a code developer until I found it extremely boring to do, unless I was doing something for myself that I felt passionate, and then I could spend hours on coding relentlessly. But every time someone told me what to code, it became painfully boring. And this is also why I dropped from the architect angle. Like, I hated drawing something that people told me to draw. So I didn't really have an idea for my career until late in my 20s, where I would just serve the IT world trying different things. And one day, in a startup that I've been seeing through its first year to being a £1 million endeavor, one day after being an IT technician, then what was it, support engineer, project manager, I was almost by mistake called product manager, and that sort of stick. I like the name. I wonder if this position is any different from the project management. And then I started researching. I started to like it, and uh, at some point of this startup's growth, the owner, who was the CEO, and the de facto product manager, decided to pursue other ventures to see if he can start other businesses. So I was named the successor product manager for many years. I did start looking into it. I enjoyed it, but it was all self-taught, all amateurish, and totally not how you do the stuff in the real big corporate world. So when I was in my 7th year in the startup, I decided it's time to grow. It's time to do something different, something else. And it was a rude awakening because I found out that no one needs a self-taught product manager. They need people with actual industry knowledge. And that's when the plan popped up, where I wanted to make sure that I break into any product role, get the right experience, and then steer my way towards some big tech FANG job. And funny enough, I remember applying to, I think it was Microsoft, or like those, well, not 7, it would be 5 years ago. And like no one even bat an eye, no, not even an autoresponder, I think. And many years later, it was Microsoft that turned to me for a job offer. So it was like hard work to pay off. And it was a constant journey of learning of what skills do you need, what is the right wording to have a successful LinkedIn profile and resume, to be that go-to product manager that people seek. And on the way, I found the skills to educate people on how to repeat my process. So that's where I sprang into course content management. And honestly, when I started, I never thought that it would blow to like 17,000 students right now. Not at all. I would be happy if it was like 1,000 by now, because it was also a way to continue with my plan to prove that I can be like a principal or head of product person, because I already have experience in teaching and mentoring people into product management. But it sort of blew more than I expected, like 17 times more, and I'm enjoying it until the very day.
That's awesome. And there are so many learnings in here, and I have so many questions now. One thing I really like is that, you tried so many different things, and it's not that you suddenly just started to go into product management. You tried a lot of different things, and then you realize that, okay, this is not working for me. This is not working for me. I think that's such a great approach to look at it because we're not restricted anymore to just one thing. That's great. And then
love the. I saw a chat that said "top mate" with PM inside, stress from Nishant. Excellent.
awesome. Great. And so now with your role as a teacher and as a mentor, so which one do you prefer, like being the product manager, continuing with that, or do you see yourself more as a teacher these days?
Honestly, this is a very hard question to say because I always saw myself. Well, I discovered myself having two halves: the product management part and the educational part. And when I completed my doctorate, the educational part was void. There was something missing. And when I discovered my coursework, the void was filled in, and I felt complete. And now, when I'm no longer a PM at Microsoft and I have a few weeks in between jobs, I'm starting to feeling the other half missing. It's harder to come up with content and good like inspiration to generate good posts when you are outside the field. And I recall, I don't know who wrote it, but something that stick to me on Twitter, that someone wrote that people teaching product management are really, it's really hard to trust them, and they shouldn't be trusted because those are people who barely scratched the surface and then started teaching, withdrew from product management, and they think that they can still teach it. And I think in Poland and sure in other countries there's a joke that if you're really bad at something, start teaching it, right? So I feel that for now at least, it will be hard for me to keep on the quality content and inspiration if I don't still, well, product manage actively. Though it's a lot of work to pursue two careers at the same time, I don't feel like I'm ready to give up product management in favor of educational efforts. But at the same time, it's like the 10-year plan to eventually drop the full-time employment, go full consultant, mentor, teacher, and work as much as I want to and not as much as I need to for survival means.
Yeah, and that makes so much sense because, on one side you have to master the craft that, that is product management until you're an absolute, because there is new to learn every day, right? And then as you're mastering that craft and on the side you're teaching it to other people, so that balance makes more sense now.
I can even tell you that before I announced on LinkedIn that I was laid off, I gave myself a few weeks to go on and look for a new job using the resume and techniques I taught, just to have an opportunity to verify it myself. Because if I would play the influencer card quickly, it would be a bit of a cheating of the system because I would have an advantage, and I wanted to see what happens if I go on my own merit, if and whether the everything that I learned previously and then put into courses is still that functional and still that effective as it was for me all those years ago. And whew, it was. It was like, okay, imposter syndrome kicking in. What if I'm teaching bullshit and I don't even know about it? But fortunately, it was not the case.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And actually that brings me to a question that, is on everyone's mind these days, that, with so many layoffs happening at so many major companies these days, and there's a lot of news around that. So how do you see the market scenario playing out in the future?
I think we are ready as an employees to go to sort of a bunker, and well, if we can keep our jobs, let's do it. Let's forget about ambition for a while. Let's not be rush, emotional, and do our best to wait it off. The market is a sign where sometimes it's an employee market and an employee market. And for the longest time, we've been enjoying high unemployment, demand for IT services and other services, and lack of workforce. At the moment, everyone that's been laid off knows that there's a huge competition on the market. While there are still positions, it's not like a momentary spike. It's a new trend, a trend that will keep up and will go on at least for 2 or 3 years, as far as I can see by what happened in the past. And for now, IT is affected most the highest because it's like a feedback loop from the pandemic. In the pandemic, there was more demand for IT services, there was more demand for staff, they were hired, and now we're back to the old norm where hybrid remote is not all the time. Stuff changed, don't get me wrong. We work in a different way, but at the same time, it's also not the middle of the pandemic. So the question is whether it's only our industry that's seeing the massive layoffs, or it's just a piece of domino that will keep getting worse. We just saw two banks collapse, and everyone was like, are we having Lehman Brothers all over again? Is this the beginning of the new financial crisis? And there are signals, frights, all across different sources about the possible new crisis coming in. We have spiking prices of everyday common items, and I would prioritize safety and being and job security over any like career ambitions at the moment. And if there's anything that would put you on as a target for possible future layoff, talk to your manager, identify it, make sure to request evaluation before it's like the periodic one. Sometimes it will be your wrongdoing that gets you laid off. Sometimes you can't prevent it. There are tons of cases where the positions are being cancelled and not people being fired. People being fired is just a consequence of this. And you can see it by people with like 20, 15 years of experience being laid off from biggest companies, which sometimes looks just ridiculous. Those people have to have so much talent, experience, knowledge to share. There's like you, I don't know. Like I have this person in the startup that has his most efficient years behind him, but he is also being kept in the company, as I understand, as a part of gratitude, because he was there when no one would consider joining, when the company was facing bankruptcy, and laying off people with such experience is basically telling friends to F themselves. Maybe I'm too harsh here, but being laid off from Microsoft after 2 years, I can sort of find the justification for it. I can find logical reasoning for that. Dropping off people, like I mentioned, sounds cruel to say the least, and especially when you're being fired in an American style where you just find yourself with no access one day and a letter of goodbye. When I was laid off in Polish legal way, I had the opportunities to say goodbye to my colleagues. I had the opportunity to sign off my projects that I still value and I still have close to heart to other people in the company, in the team, and make sure that I can go with closure. And I'm really sorry for anyone who doesn't get that closure. It's one thing is like leaving without your own fault. Other thing is when this wound keeps bleeding, and I think that having this closure is a part of healing process. I understand that there's privacy involved. There are security risks in having a fired employee with all the access for weeks on. That's true, but it's also playing cruel to people who have no malicious intent. So while I understand both, the empathy tells me to give those people at least a day to say goodbye.
Yeah, it's been a hard world since the last few months, and I really like your advice that one has to be proactive in these times to look up for these any small openings where they see that there might be certain layoffs coming in their companies or their roles, or be proactive about speaking to the managers and understanding if there are any concerns related to performance or how well the company is doing, all those things. Where I think it makes more sense to be looking for a survival right now. Yeah, like you said, leaving aside ambition for a while and prioritizing the security of oneself. That makes sense.
Yeah, the sad part is that this proactivity might not be enough and you can still be laid off, but at least you will know you did all you could. That's something like with a job interview. You can not get the job for the stupidest reason, but if you spend time to research the company, prepare your answers, then at least you did all you have control over.
Right, that makes sense. And that brings me to another question. So one is that you have a core job, and then do you think it's essential that one should also look for side hustles or create certain skill sets that allow them to monetize their skills and time and reducing the burden of their primary income, right? So that we are all more secure during such time.
This is
What are your
like,
thoughts on that?
I think it's a universal good advice to always have a backup, have a side hustle. And on one hand, I can go on and around that everyone needs a second job, a second passion, a second hobby. But as a person who's been enjoying jobless life for second month now, I do realize that life is also not only about getting richer, getting Cat can vouch for that. Not about always learning, educating, and I think that in normal times, find something that you can potentially monetize but still brings you joy. So it's not two full-time positions but one at home, but something that brings you joy. At this moment, I would see for something if you can have as a backup if you get laid off, so that maybe do what you do, but like a contractor's job on a really small time basis, just to have a profile in, say, Fiverr, where there are already opinions, when you have some projects completed. So if push comes to shove, you have something to lay back to get additional income, just in case. Uh, and it's really hard to say now. It looks bitter and grim for the industry, and I'm advising caution and prevention. But at the same time, a lot of companies are developing hiring, so it's not the end of the world yet. And do what's right for you, what you believe is the best for you as an individual. There's no point in pushing yourself to do a side hustle for side hustle's sake if it brings you to the level of tiredness that you stop caring about your own health and family. And if you are afraid that you won't be able to support them without having a side hustle backup, there's always other ways to see about future-proofing your life. Maybe you don't need that Netflix account. Maybe, okay, there's this joke, you don't need to buy coffee at Starbucks, which is always found ridiculous and like, whatever, it's just $10. I'm, I'm saying that you can reevaluate your financial situation and see with your partner, with whoever you share your income, what happens if one of you loses the job, what if both of you lose a job, and what can you do to survive for the longer time with a single salary or no salary. Maybe it's time to really put yourself on a rice only diet for a few months just to save up in case you will be in this bad situation. And again, this is an advice that resonates better when everyone feels threatened, but it's a universal thing. It's something that I considered with low priority, probability that I can find myself jobless one day because of different reasons. And while it was still an emotional kick in the butt to get laid off, actually, the plan was there all along, waiting to be taken out of the bookshelf, taken out of the file, and just follow the plan. What happens if I lose my job? So, that's a good summary of it. Have a plan. Simulate what happens if you lose your job, and what can you do to minimize the ongoing damage afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. This is a good time to, reevaluate where things are for you and have a good thought about it that, what if things go south? Should I be prepared? Should I be doing certain things? And then start planning for those today. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and with this, I think we have a lot of questions from our audience today as well. And so again, I'd like to ask everyone, if you have any questions for Bart, feel free to mention it in the comments so that we can take your questions here. And let's go ahead with some questions we already have. So Vaidevi has a question for you. How should a PM choose between their top customers' requirements and the product vision if there is a conflict? You want your customers to be satisfied, and at the same time, you want to follow your vision. So, how do you do that trade off? How do you balance things?
Well, the client is always right. You can say that. And your job as a product manager is not to have a great vision and force people into it. You start with a vision, you try to find a market fit with it. And if you find something else, it's the vision that should be adjusted to what your customers want. not the other way around. Unless it's a situation like when presumably, it's not true, but presumably when asked in the early 1900s whether whether people need a car, they said that they just need faster horses. So on one hand, if I say adjust yourself fully to what client wants, it sort of says don't innovate, don't try something risky. But I think this mostly applies to startups, to things that are still trying to break even to get clients. And from what Vaidehi is saying, it sounds like they have a product, they found some success, but the feedback from the clients doesn't fit the original vision. So I would say listen to people who want to use your product, not the original presumptions that you had that were formulated with a vision. If you stick to your vision, you are then waterfallish and you don't adjust for client feedback. And being agile is all about adjusting to that feedback, to listen to your clients. At the same time, of course, make sure that this is a quantitative feedback, that it's not like 3 clients that are shouting the loudest and they might not be representing tens of thousands of people that you have in your user base. Treat it as a point of feedback, inspiration. Do your research if that's the right thing to do with your product, and if it is, adjust the vision, adjust the product, and help and satisfy your customers' needs.
Yeah, and I love your example about horses and cars. The core point that comes in is that if your customer can imagine a better solution, then that's okay. But sometimes your customer doesn't know what kind of solution is even possible if you are bringing in such a level of innovation. We talk about the iPhone. If back in the day someone would have asked you what kind of a phone you want, you would have said, I want a QWERTY keypad. No one had imagined that it would be possible that, a full touchscreen phone could be there. So yeah, that makes sense.
And it's
Again,
amazing, even when the iPhone was released, the giants of that world, Nokia, BlueBerry, didn't see it as a competitor. It's just like, it's too pricey, it's overblown, it will never stick. Well, they
yeah,
didn't stick,
yeah,
right? And I'm
exactly.
saying this as a big Nokia fan.
Yeah, cool. Great. We have another question from Naresh. He asked, what are your views about the difference between project management and product management?
Oh, I just had a post about it on my LinkedIn page. It's very easy actually. The product manager is the person who needs to decide what to do in each order, what problems to solve, and project manager is the person who executes this project, who sees it through, who's supposed to be there to identify the risks, identify the timeline, and keep the progress running with the team. And nowadays, it can be confusing because, well, some companies will merge those two in a single position. Some companies will just put project management responsibilities on the development team and expect them to self-organize. And sometimes you'll be hired as a product manager, and product manager or product owner, and will still be expected to micromanage the development team, which is an anti-pattern. This is the situation where you as a PM don't have time to research, to be creative, to find new ways of, well, pushing the product forward. And this is a meticulous process that takes time, that often doesn't yield anything of substance, but it's a game of lottery. You need to play, and you need to play a lot in order to eventually win. And if you don't allow product manager to play the game and just expect him to earn the salary, there he will probably never become a millionaire for your product.
Yeah, that's such a nice way of putting it. And I hope we were able to answer all the questions that our audience had today. With that, we'll be wrapping up this session. So, Thank you, Bart, for joining us today and giving your insights to all our listeners. And thank you all for joining us today in this wonderful session. And we'll be sharing the coupon code links in the description of this post. So, look out for that and make sure that you don't miss out on speaking to Bart on a one-on-one session. And yeah, any closing thoughts you have, Bart? Want to share anything with the audience today?
Maybe, yes, yes, actually I do. I mean, I think I was a bit of downer and grim on this interview, but, well, whatever happens, it will eventually get better. Just don't abandon your dreams. Don't think that the world is about to collapse. Even if it does, there's no point in living in fear. Just enjoy what you have. Try to be reasonable and strategic about it to keep it sustained long term. And live with hope, not in fear.
Wonderful advice. And I think it's great that somehow this discussion about product management started to go towards careers and then, life in general. I think that's the beauty of interactions.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here today, Bart. And thank you, everyone. Look forward to our next Top Talk session where we have more interesting people join us.
Looking forward to it. And thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.